Hi, welcome to the Pot Show, your pot authority and variety show. This week we have Dr. Wendy Zaharko as our featured guest, and we'll have original music from Arthur Dodger from his new album ADHD. We'll have some marijuana magic tricks featured by Max Magic Shapiro. And we'll also have some editorials and commentaries by my sidekick, Andrew. So I hope you enjoy the Pot Show. I'm Hippie Hemptress here with a hempful hint, or should I say, Pot Show exclusive, the Snuffulator. Have you ever been somewhere and wanted to smoke pot and haven't been able to? Perhaps your parents are around, or worse, your children are around, and you know that smell of skunk is not acceptable around them. So, the Snuffulator. Simply take some dryer sheets, simple dryer sheets from your dryer sheet container, and stick it in a toilet paper roll. Just like this. And voila, it's the Snuffulator. So you can light that joint, you know, if you're old school, let's face it, if you're doing the MIPS and, vapor pens, this is a thing of the past. But if you're smoking the flower, you just take a toke and then out it comes through the Snuffulator, and the smell of skunk permeates it with the mountain fresh. So skunk in the mountain, it goes. It smells like there's a laundry issue, perhaps, or something that isn't pot. It's like something else, and so anyway, it's a good thing. And now the Maxi Snuffulator, new and improved, so you can shove even more of these in, and in fact, I actually sometimes I shove a few of these in, I actually put pot, and then I shove it in, I like throw it in my drawer, and it's like a sachet. Anyway, it's a good thing from the Pot Show. Today we're here with Dr. Wendy Zaharko, a Princeton doctor at the forefront of medical marijuana here in Aspen and the Valley, the Roaring Fork Valley and the Western Front, as we say. So, Dr. Wendy, what can you tell us about what's happening here on the scene?
Well, it's very cool. It's very groovy, actually, to use a 1970s term. I guess what I'd like to say is, if someone had said to me back in the 70s that someday I would be a medical marijuana physician in Colorado, I think I would have laughed hilariously. I wouldn't have believed it. I would have said, medical? You must be kidding. In any event, I guess what I would like to tell you is how I came to be a medical marijuana doctor. Prior to becoming a medical marijuana doctor, I was an emergency physician back in Philadelphia. And worked in a lot of different places with heavy-duty trauma, and doing this now is probably the most interesting thing I've ever done in my life. I feel like I am at the forefront of bringing back an ancient medicine that never should have been put to the side way back in the 30s in this country, and how did this come to be?
They didn't teach that at medical school when you were going?
As a matter of fact, I was looking at my house the other day at a book that I have called The History of Medicine. It's a beautiful book. It's about 3 inches thick, and it's huge like this. It's a beautiful cocktail table book. And I was looking at it, and I thought, cannabis. Ooh, let me see what kind of pictures they have for it in this book. And I flipped to the back, and it said absolutely nothing about cannabis. There was nothing about cannabis indica, cannabis sativa, cannabis ruderalis. There was nothing at all. And I just thought, wow, they just totally did away with it. In medicine, when I was in medical school, I never heard the word mentioned in class I may have heard the word mentioned outside of class a few times, but basically in class it was never ever mentioned as any type of a medicine. So anyway, fast forward basically to about 4 years ago, and I was walking down the street here in town, and I kept passing this little storefront that said Leaf, L-E-A-F, Locals Emporium for Alternative Farms. And I thought, wow, what is this all about? So finally one day I walked in and I said, hey, what do you guys do? And they said, well, this is for marijuana. This is for medical marijuana. And I said, medical marijuana? I said, what is this all about? And they said, well, this is for, so you can legally smoke pot. And I was kind of surprised, and I said, legally smoke pot? I said, I thought it had been legalized under Jimmy Carter, because I hadn't been around pot for years, and I know that Jimmy Carter had run on a platform for the decriminalization of marijuana. So I just hadn't followed it and wasn't terribly interested. And so in this little shop, they said to me, oh no, you know, if you get a certificate from our doctor, then you can qualify for medical marijuana and buy it in a shop. And I was fascinated. So I said, oh, well, who's your doctor? I had a house calls practice at the time. And I said, well, who's your doctor? And they said, well, we're trying to find one. And so anyway, so I said, oh, really? And I said, well, I'm a physician. And they said, oh my God, will you see some patients for us? And I said, sure, I can see some patients. That'd be great. And I showed them my credentials and all that. And the next day I was seeing patients. And in the very beginning, you know, I had very young people kind of coming into me, and I didn't give them the certificate. I didn't think their reasons were good enough. And then I had the 11th patient who came in, who was a 65-year-old woman, and I'll never forget her. She was 65, and she swore to me that her breast cancer had not returned from when she was 55 because of cannabis. And I was fascinated, and she said she had, I think it was stage 2B, which is fairly substantial. Any type of cancer is substantial. But anyway, she said, yeah, she said, and she had gone through chemo and radiation, a lot of nausea and vomiting, and they had prescribed for her cannabis. Or I think they had told her that she could use cannabis and that it would help with her nausea and vomiting. And so she used it, and she made it through her chemo, and she liked it, you know, during the chemo. It relaxed her, and it made her feel better about where she was in her life. And so she continued to use it, and here, 10 years later, there she was, 65, sitting in front of me, and she said, you know, she said, I swear my breast cancer didn't come back because I was smoking cannabis. And as a physician who studied some of my time over in England, I had learned to listen very, very carefully to what patients say, because, you know, they know their history, they know what works. And so I was fascinated by that, and I kind of put that in my mind, thought, interesting. So I listened to her. And I thought, this is really interesting. And I had heard that it helped with chemo. And so anyway, so we continued to talk for a while, and then she said, oh yeah, and by the way, she said, whenever I have an asthma attack, I always just take a hit of pot. And I was just dumbfounded. I said, what do you mean? And she said, well, you know, she said, I was out hiking with some friends one time, and she said, I had a very bad asthma attack. I didn't have my inhaler with me. And she said, one of the guys said, don't worry, I've got a roach, a small joint in my pocket, and I'm going to light it up and give it to you. So he lit it up and he gave it to her, and I guess she took a puff of it, and she said, and my asthma instantaneously went away. And I just went, wow, that's really bizarre. So anyway, I couldn't wait to get home that night, and I got home, and my kids were there saying, Mom, when's dinner ready? And I said, hold on just a sec. I got something I got to look up. So I went to the computer, and I put in asthma and marijuana. And bam, it pops up in front of me. And it said, and right there in front of me, it says it's a bronchodilator. It dilates, you know, the bronchi, the lungs. And asthma basically is causes bronchoconstriction, and so people have a very hard time breathing, and they're like this. And so they had given her this little hit of pot, and she was able to breathe. And here I was reading, how this happened, that it dilated her bronchi. And I was just totally dumbfounded. And it was basically my epiphany moment where I said, wow, hold it, maybe there is something to this. Maybe this is medicinal. Because in my lifetime, and I hadn't had much experience with pot, but being medicinal was the furthest thing from my mind. So anyway, so that's where I kind of started out with cannabis. And then it went from there, and now I spend many hours, every week getting people off of their inhalers, and they take a little hit of pot, and they're a lot better off. I have patients who range in age from age 4. This was a patient with a inoperable brain tumor who needs 2 doctor recommendations. So I have patients who range in age from 4 to 97, and that was a World War II veteran, who had spent 3 years in the service. And and I believe right now I'm doing a statistical analysis on my over 5,000, 6,000 patients, and it seems like the average age right now is coming out to about 43. So, the age range, goes from young to very old. Also with the demographic, which is interesting, is I have patients who are, I have Olympians, I have people who are bull riders, I've got law enforcement who come from other parts of the state to be certified. I have professors, fascinating professors who come to me. I have teachers. I had, a week and a half ago, I had a Roman Catholic priest who came in. I've got one nun, librarians. I mean, it runs the gamut. These are not people who are stoners. These are people who are hearing about what an amazing substance this is and how it can help them in many different ways in their lives. So they created reefer madness, and some people got scared. Most people knew it as a medicine. And actually, in 1937, when the Marijuana Tax Act was passed in Congress, the AMA was just stupefied that it had been, their beloved cannabis indica had been made illegal. I mean, they could not believe it. And, because this was a major part of the British and the American pharmacopoeia, the drugs that we used back then. So, but it was made illegal by, big pharma, by big corporations, and they didn't want this around. And there was also a man back then named Harry Anslinger, and he had been the head of the Department of, I think it was the Department of Narcotics and Alcohol or something like that. And alcohol, there had been the prohibition of alcohol where he had gained fame, basically. And then alcohol had been made legal. So he single-handedly figured out, let's go for marijuana. Yeah. And it was called cannabis back then. And he single-handedly created or started to use this name marijuana, because Americans, a lot of us are very xenophobic, and made it, started the process. And then there was the film Reefer Madness, and people were like, oh my God, it's only the black people who smoke pot and the jazz musicians in New Orleans.
Oh, and those hippie liberals in Aspen. Oh my God.
Absolutely. So anyway, so they were able to make it illegal, much against the will of the American people, in a way. And then so this beloved medicine was thrown into the dark. And here we are today, with the first state, Colorado, to become
Yes.
legal recreationally. And actually, I really believe that, from what I've heard from patients and all that, the recreational side of cannabis is medicinal in many ways.
So you don't believe it's a gateway drug?
No,
I mean, that's
the
always out there.
No,
Everybody, that's been the
No.
negative press.
Propaganda
Right.
The
against it.
propaganda.
Right.
So you don't
And
believe that it's a
at all.
stepping stone
Not
for
at all.
something else.
The stepping stone. So this is kind of interesting. So, and I'll just tell this little vignette. A few years ago, those skateboarders that I saw the first day when I was seeing patients, and they came in and they didn't have good reasons. They need to give me a true reason
Yeah.
for having this. And they came in and they'd say, I just like to skate high. And I sent them away.
Yeah.
Well, 5 months later, one of these guys came back to me and he said, Dr. Zaharko, I want to show you what happened to me because you refused me the license. And I said, wow, what happened? And he pulled his shirt up and he showed me this big botched scar over here. And he had, because I had refused him, and I remembered very well this, he had said to me, he said, I just want to be able to buy it in a shop where I can feel safe and I know what I'm getting. So he comes back and he shows me this scar, and I said, what happened? And he goes, I went to buy it on the black market. And he said, and I said to the guy, I just want to buy a little bit of marijuana. And the guy said, wow, I've got some really good cocaine here, and I got some really good meth, and I've even got some heroin. And the kid said a couple of bad words to him, and this guy turned around and stabbed him in his spleen. He almost bled to death. Okay, his buddy was in the car, drove him to the hospital. He was repaired and saved. And anyway, he came back and he goes, will you give me the recommendation now? And I said, well, do you have any pain there? And he goes, yeah. I said, okay, you qualify. Let's put you in.
pain.
And he said, my mom will appreciate this so much because now she'll know that I can go into a shop and I can buy it legally. So you're asking about the gateway. The gateway occurs when a young man like this goes on the street. He got exposed to heroin, got exposed to meth, cocaine, God knows what else, and and almost lost his life because of it. Now, after I gave him the recommendation, he was able to go into a shop. He was able to see what they had. He was able to buy what he needed, and it was just cannabis. So the gateway, this is not a gateway drug.
I know that contrary to this gateway notion that we've discussed that you've had patients that you've been able to use cannabis to wean them off of severe drug or alcohol problems.
Actually, thanks for bringing that up. I have many patients who come in and they're addicted, whether it's to alcohol or meth or coke or heroin or whatever, and they come in and they know somebody who used cannabis and it helped them to get off of these other substances. And so they come in and they're able to be fitted into one of the categories that we have, usually pain, okay? And they return, or I call them and say, how are you doing? And they have been able, many of them have been able to stop this sort of substance abuse, especially alcohol and tobacco. But my patients, and it's so beautiful to see, it's one of the things I love about my practice, is they come in and they come in and I say, 10 cigarettes a day. And I have seen them, a year ago. And they go, I'm stopping, Dr. Wendy. I've been really working at it. I'm down to 10. I had 2 packs, a year ago, and you told me take a toke, not a smoke.
Yeah.
And they've been working on it, and many of them have stopped. As I was saying earlier, I'm doing a statistical analysis on my patients, and it's so extraordinary to see how many have quit, by using a little bit of cannabis,
And it's also not a cold turkey because you're smoking still.
Right, you're still smoking. Actually, I have to tell you just an interesting little story, and that is I have a wonderful patient who has MS, okay? And she's 29 and a really cool lady, and I've seen her for a number of years, and every year I would say to her, the smoking, it's got to go. And she was smoking a pack and a half, I think, and I'd say, got to go, you know, you've got MS, you can't do this, this is going to hurt your body. And she'd listen to me and she'd say, okay, I'll try, but I'm so addicted to it. Anyway, about a month, 2 months ago, I think it was, I was on my way over to Grand Junction. I stopped to get coffee, and there's a little place where I stop, and I drove through, and she said, hi, Dr. Wendy, I got great news. And I said, what was that? And she goes, I've stopped. And I had seen her a few weeks before, and I had told her, you gotta stop. She said, I know. So anyway, this time I went to the window, and she said, I've stopped, and I've stopped for 10 days. And I said, how do you feel? And she said, I'm a nervous wreck, but every time I really feel like I'm just going to explode, she said, I take a little hit of pot, and it gets me over the hump. And I said, that's so wonderful. And she gave me my coffee, and I drove off, and I was just like, yes, you know, if I can help one person stop, you know, that's fantastic. So my practice is not just about pot, it's about, you know, these other things as well. So anyway, so I saw her again a few weeks ago, and she said, wow, it's been 3 weeks now, you know, and she's, you know, she's doing really well. She's going to stop, and she's going to live an entirely different life now because she's no longer beholden to a cigarette, to a cancer stick, you know?
Yeah.
She's going to live
And
this.
I had somebody say to me the other day when I was smoking a joint, that was really old school. I started to laugh.
Oh, that's really funny.
Because I don't think anyone smokes joints because the papers are carcinogen. We are now with the, you know, vaporizers. I think all of that
All
is so
the
healthy.
new-
We're finding healthier ways
Yeah.
to put the medicine in.
Yeah.
Smoking
Well,
is
one of the
definitely
best-
a thing of the past.
Yeah.
I
Delivery
think, for
system.
pot.
It's a new
delivery.
delivery
A
system
new
for an old
delivery.
medicine.
Absolutely,
The
new
new
delivery,
delivery systems.
And you know,
Yeah.
and the tinctures, I think, are an amazing way for, you know, especially smokers, to cigarette smokers, to, you know, take in cannabis. It's great. You know, it's a little sublingual, couple of drops. In medicine, in the emergency room, many, many times we'd use sublingual, whatever, nitroglycerin, Procardia, whatever, you know, to bring blood pressure down, to, you know, to help with cardiac pain. And this is one of the best ways to, you know, give people cannabis, is tinctures, you know. As of January 1st, many, many Coloradoans, okay, will want to stay with medical marijuana.
Yes.
And the reason is because, partly because of the taxation. The tax is going to be up around, I think around 35%, maybe even higher than that. So the tax is going to be high. So depending on how much cannabis you use, you may want to just stay medical. The other thing is many people are concerned about our government, and what if the government comes in and does something, okay? What if, you know, the 15-year-old kids suddenly are all using cannabis? They're getting a hold of it. You know, I mean, if I were running the government and that sort of thing happened, I'd probably do something about it, you know, because I don't want the kids to be using it. So I think, you know, we have to, you know, we have to be careful. But no, I will still be, I'm writing as many medical marijuana recommendations now as I was a year ago.
Oh,
Yeah,
very
it's quite
good.
interesting. And, you know, I voted for 64. I believe in the legalization of this innocent, beautiful plant. And I love looking at these leaves on the table, man. This is groovy, you know. So, you know, there are a lot of people who will stay medical for many different reasons. You know,
Some would appreciate your guidance as a doctor as to, you know, particular, whether it's indica or a sativa or delivery or, you know, when the timing of,
the timing.
you know, for your asthma or
Yeah.
for,
And
you
these
know,
are-
different ailments, and you know, and the guidance that you can provide, you know, as opposed to a self-medicator who, you know, who's doesn't have any.
Right. And these are all things that, you know, I talk to my patients about. And, you know, it's you know, and they're appreciative of what I tell them. I also think many of the dispensaries explain, but I am, you know, a little concerned about, you know, people go. I'm actually very concerned about people coming in from Kansas, for instance,
Yeah.
you know, and they've been smoking ditchweed, and
Yeah.
suddenly they're here in Colorado with very high potency THC, okay, and very high percent THC. And, you know, they go and let's say they buy a brownie and, you know, they're hungry. And they eat the whole brownie and suddenly, you know, they're at the top of the Eisenhower Tunnel, you know, coming down and, whoa, you know, whoa, you know, I'm very concerned about that. And I think it's our responsibility as, you know, whether it's owning a dispensary or being a physician or being here with you guys, I think it's our responsibility to tell every single one of these people, especially if they're coming in from out of state, how strong this stuff is. You know, don't eat the whole brownie. Eat a sixth of the brownie. Wait an hour. See how it works. See how your own endocannabinoid system works with this. The beauty of smoking it, there is a beauty to smoking it, and that is it's the quickest way in, okay? Goes straight up to the head. So basically you're going to feel it within about 5 minutes, okay? Sometimes even less than that. Sometimes, you know, within a minute. You're going to feel it very quickly. And when you smoke it, generally you'll be down within 2 hours. So you know that. An edible can stay in your system for 24 hours, and you can be knocked out. But you know, here's something extraordinarily that's so beautiful about cannabis: you can't die from it. There's never been a recorded death from it. An overdose will put you to sleep, might make you giggle a lot. You'll kill a couple of bags of potato chips.
Hickenloopers.
But, right, exactly, Hickenloopers.
That's what I call Cheetos, guys. You'll see.
Hickenloopers. But you cannot die from it. And actually, if you don't mind, I just want to say this. I know I'm on a roll, but the reason that you can't die from cannabis, and it's so different from all these other substances, you know, anti-anxiety medications, opiates, alcohol, the reason, and you die from those, overdoses all the time. The reason you can't die from cannabis is because it doesn't affect the ancient breathing center in the brain, okay? We have an ancient part of the brain called the Medulla Oblongata. It's like an oblong, it's a little oblong area in the back here. And it's very, very ancient, very protected in many ways. And for whatever reason, there are no cannabinoid receptors in that part of the brain. That being said, since there are no receptors there, you can't put that part of the brain to sleep. So you cannot die from it, which is remarkable, which is phenomenal. You know, this is one of the reasons, I mean, you know, that it was outlawed. It's safe. You know, to me, one of the things I tell my patients is, you know, it was outlawed for the same reason it's such a magnificent substance. It was outlawed because it works, it's safe, and you can grow it in your own flower pot.
Hi, welcome back to the Pot Show, and we'll be reviewing the book Menopausal Years, The Herbal Remedies by Susun Weed, or whatever the book actually says. The name of it is. The Pot Show, being a contrarian kind of thing, is actually not recommending this book. We're reviewing it and telling you right off the bat, this is not recommended by the Pot Show. Anyway, Ms. Weed has issues with weed.
It was published, of all places, in Woodstock, New York in 1992, which from reading this appears to be the Dark Ages.
Yeah, apparently Ms. Weed has investigated every herbal remedy there is on the planet except for weed.
Right. She's done mother's wort, liver,
garden sage,
parsley, sage, rosemary, and thyme.
Pomegranate root.
and finds in those solutions or aids to menopause. In our family,
we know that Ms. Weed is missing the weed boat because menopause is probably best treated with herbal remedies, of course, cannabis.
and the cannabis helps in the mood, the pain, the flashes, and the suffering that the rest of the family has to endure.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, 2 thumbs down to Susan's Weed's menopausal years and herbal remedies.
And if Miss Weed would like to come on the show to rebut, or perhaps she's amended the book or rewritten it, we can discuss that further.
It's not a good thing. Today we're cooking with cannabis and making one of my favorites, corned beef hash. Well, Bobby Flay or Gordon Ramsay couldn't make it today to show us how to make a proper homemade corned beef hash, so I had to improvise and use my favorite Hormel corned beef hash. So I would recommend that. Of course, unless you can, do something better, which, let's face it, is pretty much anything. Anyway, but the more important part of the hash is actually the hash. And here I have a little bit of hash oil, which is actually, this is enough, believe it or not, this little tiny amount for 10 people. So obviously I can't tell you to put this whole thing into the can of 2 servings. However, if you were going to buy 5 cans, you could then put this entire thing in. Otherwise, you have to divide by 4 and, adjust your recipe, which of course you always have to do when you're cooking with cannabis because you never know how much someone can handle, which is why I prefer, when you're cooking with cannabis, it be something that someone doesn't want to eat a lot of, like stuffing, on Thanksgiving or something. It'd be something, more manageable. Like, let's face it, how much of this could you possibly eat? So anyway, I would then attempt to open the childproof oil, which has been packed in a childproof manner, and I've been fussing with this for quite some time. So in a proper kitchen, you'd have a little, oh, here we go. Okay. Oh, wow, that's cool. Yeah, it's too bad we don't have odorama on the pot show. So we would then take about 25% of this and put it in the pot. Okay. I'm not going to do that yet because I'm going to attempt to cook this in the studio. And so what we have to do first is figure out how to open the can, which I, of course, need glasses to do. Okay, so here we go. Here's the part with the cooking with cannabis that becomes difficult. Okay, so we open the can, and this is wonderful 20th century design. I mean, this might be the coolest, actually made in Italy. Okay, so this is unfortunately one of those form follows function things that just don't work. So does anybody have a can opener that somebody that wants to cook with cannabis can use? Thank you. Here we go. Okay, so we have made in America, probably. Oh, it's a swing away. It's a swing away. I'm going to recommend the swing away. And I'm not kidding. If you want to actually zoom in on that, it is a great can opener. I'm not going to make any comments on that because this is the pot show. I'm not going to talk about the swing away. So Here we go. She got it. Oh boy. Oh, Microsoft or Apple, who named spam? Why couldn't we have, gone with the hash? Wouldn't it? Well, because we have a hashtag, right? It would be confusing. Hashtag spam. Okay. So you put the hash in, and the recipe says that you can chop up celery or green pepper or chili, but really, as long as there's hash oil in it, it doesn't really matter what it tastes like. And that's the great thing about cooking with cannabis is, there's really no hope for this. That it could never taste good. So just give up and enjoy the ride, as we say. So there's a hempful hint from the pot show.
One of the other things that I thought we might talk about is, as we're hopefully progressing towards a peaceful state, and we've had the Iraqi war veterans coming home and the Afghan veterans coming home, and many of them with post-traumatic stress disorders that I'm sure existed in the World War II vets and Korean vets and Vietnam vets. It just was undiagnosed.
Right.
And like if you could discuss some of the uses and benefits to those returning veterans.
So PTSD is not on our list of qualifications for a card in Colorado. However, most veterans who come in to see me, have been traipsing across a desert in Iraq or Afghanistan, carrying, 90-pound, 140-pound pack. They have back pain, and they come in and they basically give me the right answers, and I'm able to put them in under back pain, and then they return or call me or whatever and say to me, oh my God, this helps me so much with my PTSD. This is incredible. And what they say, and it's really interesting because I've had a lot of veterans who come in and they line up 15 bottles, pill bottles, and they line up 15 pill bottles and they go, Dr. Wendy, when I use cannabis, I don't need any of this. I don't need any of this at all. And I use a little bit of cannabis and it makes the war go away and it makes my life better. And it just allows me to relax and to enjoy my life. How can you deny, of all people in the country, in the world, how can you deny our veterans something that helps them out? And fortunately, the Veterans Administration and Eric Holder, our Attorney General, came out a couple of years ago and said in the states where cannabis is legal, if a veteran needs and is helped by medical marijuana, it's okay if he wants to have a card and use cannabis as one of his medicines. Okay. So this was the first big leap for our government. They're partners with the VA. They're partners now, with cannabis, and they should be. This is, I'll tell you something. If, for the Affordable Care Act, the best thing they could do is to legalize cannabis nationwide, and they should allow people to grow their own cannabis, because then you're growing your own plants, you're growing your own medicine, and you're not going to bother the family medical doctor or the internist for Xanax, for Wellbutrin, for, all of these medicines that cost our healthcare system so much money. And then there are the side effects of all of those substances. Right. So, if they were smart, if Washington, D.C. and President Obama, who I'm a big fan of, if they were smart, they would acknowledge this and get this rocking, because this could really make things work in the Affordable Care Act for older people. You know, you're talking about Israel a few minutes ago.
Yeah.
You know, Sanjay Gupta did an extraordinary job, has helped out so much with his program on CNN called Weed. And, you know, in that program, he showed in Israel how the older people are using cannabis in the nursing homes. Oh my God, it is the most extraordinary substance for older people. You know, sometimes older people get paranoid in the evenings. They're on all kinds of medicines. Their kidneys don't work as well. You know, they get these high levels. They overdose. They get zonked out. They become mean sometimes. And you know, if you give them, exactly, and if you give them some cannabis as their medicine, this is going to mellow them out.
How do you see it, you know, going to dealing with the AMA or next generation of medical school students?
Well, first of all, it's interesting. The AMA is for this. Okay, that's number one. The AMA was for it before. You know, when it was presented to Congress, the AMA was for it back in 1937. The AMA is still for it now. You know, this was, as I said, you know, the primary medicine in the doctor's little black bag. So in medical schools, I actually don't know what they're doing in medical schools about it, but I'm certain, you know, if people watch this great program, the medical schools are going to start to see, and I'm sure they're going to start to teach. And actually, out of the Massachusetts Medical Society, every single day I get in the mail something in my email, something called the Answer page, and it is the Massachusetts Medical Society, and they teach about cannabis on it. It costs a certain amount of money, and we get continuing medical education credits by using this. But you know, this was the first time that I had seen them really looking at this. And so I think, you know, without question, you know, this year, next year, they're going to start talking about it. But as I said, when I was in medical school, this is a medicine? You got to be kidding.
Yeah.
You know, it was never ever mentioned.
And then being, you know, typical, you know, hippie, anarchist, paranoid, conspiracy theory types, you know, how is Big Pharma going to turn this into something they're going to want to sell?
If they're truly interested in helping, you know, make people's lives better, then the pharmaceutical industry is definitely going to get involved, because this is the best antidepressant around.
Yeah.
You can't beat it. It is, you know, I've heard from many patients, you know, it's an extraordinary aphrodisiac.
Oh,
you know?
I'll vouch for
Harness
that,
it.
by the way.
Yeah,
And I
okay.
touched on earlier about, people coming from a place where it's not legal and they're used to some kind of ditch weed, and, you know, and who knows,
Yes.
you know, what chemicals are on top of that. And what we've seen, Nancy, well, Hippie Hemptress and I attended a business conference about this, all kinds of cannabis emerging businesses, and when you're growing yourself, you know exactly what nutrients are being used and what's in the soil to grow, in effect, grow your medicine. And in the regulatory schemes of the various states that have legalized it, they also have a very elaborate kind of crop control and tracking.
We have an
They're calling
incredible
it seed to sale.
Seed to sale.
Basically, so that and that a batch
know
won't
what's
come
in your
through that's
medicine.
full of bacteria or lead or
right.
other problems, so that you know you're getting a
You know exactly
pure
what you're getting.
Dose or a pure
Strain.
strain, and that should in itself be much safer than anything else.
But now, you know, as you're saying, we have seed to sale, and we know what we're getting. You know, I haven't heard many people complain. I've never heard anyone complain about mold, okay, which
No.
is a problem.
Oh, yeah.
You know, in some places, but not in this state, at least not in our dispensary. So, you know, it's extraordinary, you know, what we have going on. I mean,
Oh,
it's phenomenal, you know, and it's about time.
Oh.
And yet, you know, my patients oftentimes will complain about things. Oh, I got to go to the shop. You know, it's so expensive, so on and so forth. And I look at them and I go, hold it, just a second. I'm from New Jersey originally, and it's legal there. And nobody, or very few people, can get a card. You got to have Huntington's chorea. You've got to have, you know, something so severe in order to qualify. Nobody qualifies there. Even if you qualify, okay, even if you qualify, you really can't get anything decent. You can't get any medicine. So we're so much better off here. We're so lucky. And and what needs to happen in this country and with the states that are legal now, they need to look at what we're doing here and they need to follow it. I actually, if I can tell you a story about a patient of mine that I saw recently for the book that I'm writing, which is a tribute to my patients who educated me about this cannabis. So I saw this gentleman, a 67-year-old man, who had come in to see me at the Gonzo Museum here in Aspen. And he had said to me as he came in, he goes, Dr. Wendy, hi, I saw you a year ago. I'm your poster boy for migraine headaches. And I said, okay, I'll see you in a couple of minutes. So anyway, he came in and the story was so beautiful. He had come to me the year before for severe migraines. He had had them for 55 years from a trauma. He'd hit his head on the playground when he was 10 years old. Nausea, vomiting, kinds of migraines that he started, you know, shortly after the trauma as a 10-year-old. And they treated him with everything. You name it, he was given it. And he eventually, he never did any sort of you know, street drug at all, a very straight guy. And he ended up, you know, coming to see me at the age of, I think it was 65, okay? And he told me about the migraines initially, and I prescribed for him cannabis. He then went, apparently, and got tincture, indica tincture.
Because he doesn't smoke.
Right. Took it home and used 3 drops that night, okay? The next day, he didn't have a migraine. They weren't daily migraines, but there were a lot of them. And he didn't have a migraine. He thought, okay, I'll take a little, 3 more drops the next night, 3 more, 3 more. So every night for a year, he took 3 drops of indica. That year, he never had a migraine that entire year. I mean, that is my poster boy. And I mean, this is a guy whose migraines were so severe. I mean, nausea, vomiting, auras, whatever, gone. And it was really interesting talking to him just recently because he's one of the patients in my book. And he said to me, he said, I got scared that maybe if I didn't use just the 3 drops, that maybe they would come back. And he said, they haven't come back, and I'm just going to stick with my 3 drops of indica, you know? Wow,
well,
you know?
You listened,
Yeah.
and,
Yeah.
you know, which patients need to hear, to see that the doctor is understanding of what their ailments are, you know, and also, besides listening, he got his life back.
He did.
And,
he totally got his life
you know,
back.
and after a 50-year gap, it's like,
55.
you know, incredible. And
it's incredible.
And I can't wait for
Yeah.
your book to
Yeah,
come
well,
out, and then
thanks.
we'll have to, have, you know, hold it up and have another talk.
Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, but you know, his is a great story, and actually, William Osler, who was the founder, basically, of modern medicine, and who wrote a book, medical book called The Principles and Practice of Medicine, which was the primary book that was used by medical students up until, I don't know, I even used it when I was in England for a while. But William Osler said of cannabis, he said, it is the safest known therapeutic agent to mankind. It is the safest agent that can be used. And then he actually wrote, I believe, a pamphlet or a book, I'm not sure, saying that, it's about migraines, that this is the medicine for migraines. And migraine, I have tons of migraine patients, and they are happy. Some of them come back and will say, most all of them come back and say that they have far fewer migraines. Many of them come back and go, they just have an aura now, but no migraine.
And menopause
right.
too. I mean, you know,
Yeah.
there's the
There's
drug.
another,
There's
absolutely.
the drug, you know,
There it is.
because
Yeah.
it hits in, you know, in all
Well,
of those.
it calms everything.
Oh,
You
yeah.
know, menopause is anxiety producing. You know,
Anxiety.
between hot flashes
Oh,
and
yeah.
cramps and whatever. Yeah, I mean it's
Yeah,
it's
it's
great.
yeah,
And all I
beautiful.
can say is my life is
The
enhanced
stress.
when hippie Hemptress
when
here
hippie
is
Hemptress-
taking cannabis for menopause.
Yeah.
And I think the kids would also
I
say
think,
their
yeah, I
lives
think
are
there isn't a
enhanced as
husband
well.
out there that's
It's like-
going through a
You're
wife
right.
with menopause that wouldn't benefit
Right,
from.
but this substance, this is it.
Yeah.
This is really it. This is and you know, it's one of the reasons I feel so good is you know, I feel I'm bringing back an ancient medicine to people, and I love doing that. It's fabulous.
Thank you so much. This
Thank
has
you
been
so
great.
much, Doctor.
This is a Pot Show editorial. The Pot Show would like to nominate Dr. Raphael Mechoulam, the Israeli scientist who in 1964 was the first person to synthesize THC, which, if you didn't know what it is tetrahydrocannabinol, the active ingredient in pot for the Nobel Prize in Medicine. This synthesization of THC is what enabled the scientific study of cannabis. It was published in the Journal of the American Chemical Society. As we approach the 50-year anniversary of Dr. Mechoulam's discovery, it is about time that the Nobel Committee take notice and honor him. At 82 years old, he's still working in his lab at Hebrew University in Jerusalem, where Dr. Sanjay Gupta made a pilgrimage to meet him this year. Following his 1964 breakthrough of synthesizing THC, Dr. Mechoulam identified anandamide, a naturally occurring human cannabinoid neurotransmitter, meaning what makes you feel high even when you haven't ingested anything. Now, one of the perks of discovering something is you get to name it. So he turned to the Sanskrit word ananda, meaning supreme bliss. He continues to this day to study its medical uses, especially the low THC, high cannabinoid strains that are most useful in medicines for severely ill patients, and champion the academic, medical, and intellectual freedom to do so. Unfortunately, the Nobel Committee does not take nominations from startup TV shows. However, if any of our viewers are among the 3,000 selected professors at top worldwide universities, Nobel laureates in physiology or medicine, or members of the Nobel Assembly, you may nominate candidates for Nobel honors. While the list did not specifically state members of the Aspen Institute, perhaps there is some crossover. Perhaps Dr. Mechoulam has been nominated in the past. Only the winners are announced while the others are kept secret for 50 years. So it would only be fitting to honor the man who brought the world supreme bliss on the 50th anniversary of his breakthrough discovery. The only thing for sure is that there would be no medical marijuana and hence recreational marijuana without him. And I dare say you'll never see the name Sidekick Andrew and the Nobel Prize in the same sentence again.
Hi, my name is Max Magic Shapiro, and this is a magic experience from the Pot Show. I bet you've seen a magician cut their assistant in half. Well, real mature, guys. Sure, that's easy. You're not the one getting hurt. Well, I'm going to do something that no sane magician would ever do. I'm going to cut myself in half. First, I do something stupid. Next, the stupid part. First, one blade. Oh! Then the other. Never feels good. And now, ouch. But at least no one really got hurt. Cool. Anyway, now that's magic from the Pot Show.
The Pot Show is proud to welcome Arthur Dodger singing his new song, Stoned Fox, which he wrote for the Pot Show. So here's Arthur Dodger.
Stoned fox. 3 times today I said, stoned fox, can't go on this way. Stoned fox, try once more and I never want to see you again. Stoned fox, try once more, I said, stoned fox. Out the door, I said, stoned fox. Do it again, and I never want to see you again. Stoned fox. Stoned fox. Stoned fox. Yeah. Stoned fox. Stone fox. 3 times today I said, stone fox, can't go on this way. Stone fox, try once more and I never wanna see you again. Stone fox, too many times I said, stone fox. Nickels and dimes I said, stone fox. Try once more and I never wanna see you again.
Thank you for watching The Pot Show. On our upcoming episodes, we've invited Bill Clinton to come and discuss why he chose not to inhale back in the 60s. Also, I'll be making a chia pet out of pot seeds. So that's what's coming up on The Pot Show.
Say goodnight, hippie Huntress.
Good night, hippie Hemtress.